30 years. That is how long it took for Marcus Webb's biological mother to find her way back to the door of the woman who raised him. 30 years of school plays she did not attend. 30 years of fevers Ruth sat through alone. 30 years of a boy becoming a man in a house that was never supposed to be his, but became the only home he ever knew. And now Diane was standing on Ruth's doorstep, in an expensive coat, with a husband who did not know his wife had a son she had given away at 2 days old. Drop a comment right now and tell us where in the world you are watching from. And if you are not yet subscribed to Turning Point Tales, hit that subscribe button. Marcus was 2 days old when his biological mother left him. Not on a stranger's doorstep. On Ruth's. Ruth was 31 years old. She lived 3 streets from the hospital where Marcus was born. She was a nurse's aide. She knew Diane from the neighborhood. Not well, but enough. Diane knocked on her door at 4 in the morning. She was holding a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. She had discharged herself from the maternity ward 3 hours after giving birth. She said, "I cannot do this. I am asking you." Ruth looked at the baby, then at Diane. She said, "Come inside." They sat at the kitchen table, the baby between them. Diane said she was leaving. She had a plan, a life she had been building that did not include this. The man involved did not know. She was not going to tell him. She said, "I am not a bad person. I just cannot." Ruth looked at the baby for a long time. Then she said, "I will take him, but if you come back for him, you come through a court, not through my door." Diane agreed. She walked out at 4:40 in the morning. Ruth held a 2-day-old boy who was not hers and decided he was. She named him Marcus. Her daughter Karen was 4 years old. Karen did not understand where the baby came from. She accepted him the way 4-year-olds accept most things that are placed in front of them, as simply part of how things now were. Ruth raised Marcus alongside Karen, on a nurse's aide salary, in a 3-bedroom house that had been her mother's before it was hers. She told Marcus the truth at age 8. Not the full version, the honest version for an 8-year-old. She said, "Your birth mother could not care for you. She brought you to me, and I chose you." Marcus said, "Why did she not want me?" Ruth said, "It was not about want. Sometimes people make decisions that are about them, not about the person they are making them about." Marcus said, "Are you my real mum?" Ruth looked at her son, said, "I am the one who stayed. That is the realest thing I know." Marcus grew up. He was not the easiest child. He was curious in ways that created trouble. He asked questions adults found inconvenient. He pushed boundaries. He made mistakes and owned them. Ruth did not have money to solve his problems. She had time and attention and the specific skill of making Marcus feel that whatever he had done was something that could be addressed without it changing who he was in her eyes. He graduated at 22, engineering degree. Ruth was in the front row. Karen was beside her. Ruth was wearing her good dress. Marcus crossed the stage, found her face in the crowd, held up his certificate toward her. Just toward her. Nobody else. She covered her mouth. Karen put an arm around her. By 32, Marcus was a structural engineer. He had his own small practice. He owned a flat. He called Ruth every Sunday. He had dinner at her house every other Thursday. His life had the specific structure of someone who grew up in a stable home and does not take that for granted. Ruth was 61. She had retired from nursing. Her garden was the best on the street. She had Karen nearby, grandchildren who called her Nan, and Marcus every other Thursday. She was happy, the particular happiness of a woman who built something from almost nothing and has the evidence of it around her every single day. Then the car appeared in her driveway. Diane had found success. After leaving Marcus at Ruth's door, she had moved to another city, built a career in real estate, met Leon 15 years later, married him, built a life that looked exactly like the one she had planned. She had thought about Marcus, often, more than she told anyone, but she had not come back, because coming back meant explaining to Leon that she had a son he did not know existed. For 15 years, she had protected that secret. Then Leon's health declined, and sitting beside him in a hospital room one evening, Diane understood something she had been avoiding. She could not let him die without him knowing the full truth of who she was. She told him on a Tuesday evening. He listened to everything. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said, "We need to find him." Finding Marcus was not difficult. He was not hiding. He had his name on a practice, a website, a life lived in the open. What was difficult was deciding what to do when they found him. Diane chose to go to Ruth first. That decision was the only one in 30 years that showed any understanding of what she had actually done. She drove to Ruth's house on a Saturday morning. Ruth opened the door, looked at Diane. The last time she had seen her was at 4:40 in the morning, when Diane had walked out of her kitchen and not looked back. Ruth said, "I know why you are here." She stepped back. "Let them in." Diane said she wanted to meet Marcus. She said she understood she had no right to that. She said Leon knew everything now, that she wanted Marcus to know he had not been born from nothing, that there was history, medical background, a father who wanted to know him even if late. Ruth listened to all of it. Then she said, "Marcus is 32 years old. He makes his own decisions. I will tell him you came. What he does with that is his." Diane said, "That is fair." Ruth said, "It is not about fair." She said, "Fair left when you walked out of my kitchen at 4:40 in the morning and did not contact your son for 30 years. She said, "This is about what Marcus needs, not what you need, not what makes you feel better." She said, "I will tell him." Ruth called Marcus that evening. She told him plainly, "Your biological mother came to my house today. She wants to meet you. Her husband is with her. He did not know about you until recently. It is entirely your decision. I will support whatever you decide." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How did she look?" Ruth said, "Like someone carrying 30 years of something heavy." Marcus said, "And you? How are you?" Ruth said, "I am fine. I always am." He said, "I know. That is what you always say." She said, "Because it is always true." He said, "I will think about it." He thought about it for 2 weeks. He met Diane and Leon on a Wednesday afternoon. A coffee shop, neutral ground. He was there first. Diane came in and stopped when she saw him. She had not expected how much he looked like a person she recognized. Herself around his age. Something of her jaw, something of her hands. She sat down. Leon sat beside her. Marcus looked at both of them. He said, "I am not angry." He said, "I want you to know that from the start, I am not angry, and I am not looking for a family to replace the one I have." He said, "But I have questions. Medical history, background, things I should probably know." Diane answered every question. At the end, Leon leaned forward, said, "I am sorry. For what it is worth, I would have wanted to know you." Marcus looked at him, said, "I know." He said, "That is not your fault." He drove straight to Ruth's after. She had made dinner, the kind of dinner she made when she knew he needed something to do with his hands while they talked. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had started 32 years ago. He told her everything. She listened the way she had always listened, completely, without interruption. At the end, he said, "She said she thought about me." Ruth said nothing. He said, "I believe her." Ruth said, "Good." He said, "It does not change anything." Ruth said, "No." He said, "You are my mum." Ruth looked at her son, 32 years old, structural engineer, the kind of man who calls every Sunday, who held up his certificate on a stage toward the right face in the crowd. She said, "I know," said it simply, the way you say something that has been true for 30 years and does not need volume to prove it. Diane and Marcus met 3 more times that year. Careful, unhurried, on his terms. He answered the questions he could answer. He left open the ones he could not. Leon sent him something in the post. Medical history, a photograph, a short note that said, "I am glad you exist. That is enough for me." Marcus put the photograph in a drawer, not because he did not want it, because he already knew where to put the things that mattered most. On his wall, in his phone, at the kitchen table every other Thursday. Ruth did not ask about the meetings with Diane. She waited for Marcus to bring it to her. He always did. That was the agreement they had had since he was 8 years old. She would tell him the truth. He would come to her when he was ready. 32 years later, the agreement still worked. Some things you build carefully enough that they hold. Ruth built one of those things. From a 4:40 morning, and a kitchen table, and a decision that nobody asked her to make, and she made anyway. Every Thursday dinner, every graduation, every Sunday call, the realest thing she knew. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Turning Point Tales. We will see you in the next one.